Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Self-Development with Tactics podcast. And today we're going to talk about relationships and we're going to talk about men. I found a really interesting article about something that, throughout the years I've been talking about for quite a while. But we're going to see after the intro. It is actually very interesting, tremendously interesting that I'm encountering this particular thing now. But I'm going to show you in a second. I mean, it really is also kind of a cliche. And always when it comes to cliches, I tend to go to the side that is not favoring this cliche, that just says, okay, it is basically not the truth. It is not what is reality. But I'm going to show you. Do bad boys / bad guys / bad men really do get all the women? This is essentially the question that this article is trying to solve, trying to answer, and apparently it is the case that somehow it is the case. As funny as it is, and as maybe also as much as I do not really want to have this or let this be the case quite. Anyway, so this is a Psychology Today article by Martin Greff, PhD. Love digitally, okay. Do bad guys always win? When are good guys more attractive? Posted on November 24th, 2021, so today. Reviewed by Abigail Fragen. And it is verified there or something. I don't know. But let me actually make sure that the mic is also working in the way it should. So maybe actually doing it like this, doing it like that, probably be more beneficial. Yeah, there we go. I think this is better. I think it makes more sense. Anyway, so the key points, apparently those key points of the text, basically kind of summarizing it and whatnot. And it's saying, desirability ratings of attractive men increased when they were also described as altruistic. The first key point. And second, physically attractive and altruistic men become more desirable than the total value of these two traits independently. So when somebody is attractive but also altruistic, those two things together as a combined thing, they apparently make somebody more desirable than either one of those traits independently. So if you know that you are a really attractive person, then maybe you should also be an asshole. Quite. Somehow. I don't know. Anyway. Altruism made men who were less attractive more desirable for long-term relationships. So apparently also, when you're not really attractive, and when you know you're not really attractive, just make yourself rare. Through a lens of altruism or whatever. Men who were just altruistic were perceived as more desirable than those who were just attractive. So which, I don't know, it really makes sense. I mean, if they say altruism made men who are less attractive more desirable for long-term relationships, but I do actually really want to point out long-term relationships. Which is actually really funny, it doesn't make any sense. I would rather guessed quite, that it is all about, hooking up and having a mate for the day or whatever it may be, but not necessarily something forever, for long-term relationships, long-term things in general. Anyway, men who were just altruistic were perceived as blah, 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 blah. So bad guys are generally seen as the types of men who do what they want. They break the rules and behave with little regard for what anyone else thinks. Furthermore, in popular culture, bad boys are often portrayed as being more desirable to women. However, studies have found that man actually tends to show more concern for others when in the company of potential mates. In other words, they behave more altruistically. Oh! Fucking hell. just before hitting the record button, just before hitting the stream button, I thought, well, should I actually check what altruistic means? Because I didn't know. I assumed that it is a better word and a more suiting word for just being an asshole, quite. But apparently this is not really the case, so define. There we go. I hope you can see. Oh, no, you can't. Altruistic, showing a disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others, or unselfishness. It was an entirely altruistic act. So all of a sudden I do really like this article. Voila. This is how fast things can be. That's amazing. But you can see this little box, do you? No, you can't. Anyway. Furthermore, women sometimes show a preference for men who behave in this way, possibly because such behavior indicates that a man will be a good partner or a good parent. So, kind of, once again, regarding the key points, then yeah, it really does make sense that somebody that is nice and apparently cares about other people, that they are more suited for long-term relationships. Which kind of also underlines the thought that I had before, like, yes, of course, when you're being an asshole, probably, maybe, I don't really know, your potential of being a one-night stand might be a bit higher. I don't know, maybe there is some balance there, Either you're good for a one-night stand or you're good for a long-term relationship. I guess, I don't know, I'm just no psychologist or whatnot. But could be, well, anyway, let's not hypothesize, or whatever you call it. So exactly how important a characteristic is male altruism for women when selecting a partner? Is it as important as physical attractiveness, for example? Furthermore, does altruism become more or less important depending on whether it is being considered for a long-term relationship, a person with whom you would decide to be committed, blah, 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 blah. So a study by British researchers Daniel Farrelly, Paul Clemson, and some other guys aimed to examine how women's desire for men described as altruistic dependent on whether they were being considered for a short-term or long-term relationship. They also assessed the extent to which this desire was influenced by men's physical attractiveness. The researchers presented their female participants with pairs of photographs of high and low physically attractive men, along with different scenarios describing situations where the man could behave altruistically or not. So by the way, they just before said men who were just altruistic were perceived as more desirable than those who were just attractive. No. I think there it really heavily depends on the context. Of course, when it is in the context of a fucking one-night stand, who will care quite? Do they really care then, in that context? I would once again say, in the context of a long-term relationship, it would really make sense, If you think about having kids, if you think about, just being together with this person for a longer period of time, of course, it makes sense to choose a partner, at least from a very rational point of view, to choose a partner that is indeed, good to you and cares about your health mentally and physically and also your well-being, just in general. Then it really does make sense. To some degree, of course, as well, when it comes to hookups and whatnot, it is kind of also the case, since I would assume for a woman there's still a potential danger of being at somebody's place quite alone, or actually literally alone, and so on and so forth. So I do assume that it might play a role as well. But to which degree it does play a role, and to which degree you need to be a nice person, is also questionable then, quite. But anyway. Scenario A. Person S and person T, Y, S and T, are both at the picnic beside a river that has a fast current, and that they see a child being swept down the river gasping for breath. A woman cries, "Help, save my child." Scenario B, person E and person F are walking through a busy town and notice a homeless person sitting near a cafe. After this, participants read how each of the two men behaved. High altruism, person D hears the mother's cries and decides to jump into the raging river to try to save the child. Person E decides to go into the cafe to buy a sandwich and a cup of tea to give to the homeless person outside. Low altruism. Person S sees the speed of the current and chooses not to try to help the child. Person F pretends to use his mobile phone and walks straight past the homeless person. In summary, participants were presented with high physically attractive men and low physically attractive men acting altruistically or non-altruistically. They were also presented with photographs of high and low attractive men accompanied with neutral scenarios where each man was described as behaving neither altruistically nor non-altruistically. All the female participants were asked to rate how desirable, undesirable to very desirable each of the men in the scenarios would be for either a long-term relationship or a short-term relationship. Now it is actually it is very interesting that they indeed also asked for short-term relationships, and this makes it even more valuable, this study. Well, it is a study, this maybe let's call it experiment, because I'm not too sure on the size of the study and whatnot, and whether it is then credible and so on and so forth. But it does make it a bit more credible, at least for me, seeing that they give a certain amount of choices to those women that had to rate the man, because, well, if it was only about long-term relationships, then I don't know, like I would say that, well, of course I'm going to choose the attractive, handsome and very nice person. It just makes sense. But it is some sort of a, this is kind of a problem I'm having with that in the end it is no real scenario. This is not really happening. Of course, it is also just really not possible to do this in a study setting, quite. Maybe you could do this to some degree and whatnot, and so on and so forth, by just, maybe asking people, married people, non-married people, and so on and so forth. But in this context, for me, it just makes sense. Okay, of course, I'm going to choose this one person that is nice and also good looking for a long-term relationship. Guess what? Of course. But yeah, maybe I'm also not seeing everything. I guess it also really depends on how this study was done. Meaning, well, obviously, as I said, I'm gonna take this person that is really attractive and also really nice. But what if this person is not choosable? What if I have to decide between this person that is, good looking but an asshole, or the other person that is not good looking or not as good looking and but very nice? Well, of course, probably I'm gonna choose the nice person. I don't know, like it really heavily now also depends on how they did this study or experiment or whatnot. Altruism. Overall, women found altruistic men to be more desirable than less altruistic men, thus illustrating the importance of altruism in partner choice. However, when they compared preference based on the type of relationships required, women found altruistic men to be desirable for long-term relationships, whereas non-altruistic men were rated as more desirable for short-term relationships. It seems that rather than being unimportant in short-term relationships, altruism is actually undesirable. So what does not being altruistic man for short-term female mate? So what does not being altruistic mean for short-term female mate choice? Could it even be that female choice in short-term relationships is related to more to a preference for undesirable traits such as psychopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism? Machiavellianism. So it's from Machiavellianism. Anyway, physical attractiveness. No, of course not. I'm not going to choose this person that is very good looking. Nah, why would I? Why would I? In terms of physical attractiveness, women's preferences for men who were described as altruistic were influenced by how physically attractive they were. The desirability ratings of attractive men increased when they were also described as altruistic, suggesting that altruism adds to the effect of their other qualities. Furthermore, possessing both altruism and physical attractiveness had a large effect on the desirability ratings of men than simply the sum of each factor separately. I see. Altruism or physical attractiveness. For long-term relationships. For long-term relationships. For long-term relationships. Women preferred low attractiveness. What? Preferred low attractiveness men if they were described as altruistic as opposed to non-altruistic. Oh, I see. Now depending on altruism versus physical attractiveness. Well done. Furthermore, for long-term relationships, men high in altruism yet low in physical attractiveness were judged to be more desirable than men who were low in altruism but high in physical attractiveness. Therefore, altruism is seen as more desirable than physical attractiveness for long-term relationships. The importance of altruism in female partner choice, even when compared to physical attractiveness, illustrates that altruism is a highly important characteristic and one which women are attracted to in long-term partners. The take-home message is that behaving altruistically may be a good strategy for men looking to attract a long-term partner. However, further research may be needed to look at how men of different levels of attractiveness employ altruistic behavior when attempting to attract long-term partners. One of the limitations of the study is that it employed only 2 scenarios, yet quite different ones, which also may have signaled characteristics other than altruism. Also actually very important to note, to say, and to point out. For example, rescuing a child may also have indicated a degree of physical prowess. Is it prowess or prowess? I don't know. Which would certainly be perceived as different from feeding a homeless person. However, the findings do illustrate the importance of altruism in partner choice, especially for long-term relationships. Which, once again, at least for me, really does make sense. Of course, if I have to choose somebody, I'm going to choose this person that is probably going to support me and stay with me. Being a single mother definitely is not a funny thing, nor is it easy. Said by a person that was, not raised by a single mother, but I think you kind of get it. I know what I'm referencing, what I'm talking about. It really is not easy, and all of these certain scenarios that a single mother could encounter, possibly when the father leaves, dies, whatever, is unimaginable, to some degree. Really fucked up shit that basically can happen, and that really could get you in a position that you really do not want to be in, period, no matter what. On the other hand, what I just thought about, isn't physical attractiveness also a sign of health and, being young, quote unquote, or at least looking young, having good genes, which, in the end, I guess if somebody is nice and whatnot, but has very low physical attractiveness, maybe actually being overweight, isn't this person then prone to dying relatively early, compared at least to the very attractive person, this person that is indeed seemingly more fit, since they're specifically talking about physical attractiveness, which I don't really know if they also mean one's face then, is this also my physical attractiveness or part of physical attractiveness, or is it something else, or is it just the body? Anyway, so then wouldn't it also make sense to choose somebody that seemingly is healthy, since as I said, being a single mother is definitely not easy, and definitely not something funny, and definitely not something that you wanna have the risk of encountering, like this situation, this scenario. But in the real end, it also really depends on the people there, and I actually do just want to double check. No, they didn't. Can I? Well, one would actually really have to check out this paper and this study, because, well, do those women that, first of all, how many of them were there? First point, very important point. If it was only 2 women, well, just I don't care about the study anymore. On the other hand, which type of women? You know, was there also diversification in skin color to really make a good point? Also religions, ethnicities, like all of these things, which I think is also very important, you know, because I would assume that it really does change from culture to culture, from ethnicity to ethnicity, from color to color. I wouldn't say so. You know, I think it really is about culture then, and it definitely is changing. You know, I would assume quite, which one could potentially disprove this thought by actually having a very big size in terms of the study. On the other hand, were these women also attractive? Question mark, you know. I think also a pretty important point there, because if somebody rates me, then well, basically I'm saying, okay, when somebody is attractive, their opinion means more to me compared to somebody that is not attractive. And well, I don't know, like, I guess it actually is the case in this context. Quite. As dumb and as strange and as maybe also bad as it may sound, but it quite is the case, you know? Why would somebody care about someone's opinions that is not relevant to one, quite, or relevant to the common opinion about attractiveness? I don't know, like, of course this is highly subjective and whatnot, but still there are some things that are just seen as attractive and some other things that are just not seen as attractive at all, period. But still, actually a really interesting article, really interesting study there, and also good that people are doing so. But as I said, it really highly depends on context, and as he actually also pointed out, which I really appreciate, those stories that, you know, they're just 2 stories. Might still mean something, might still say something, this study, but this needs to be pointed out, and this needs to be, not to be overseen. Just 2 stories, the size, and all the other things that I've mentioned before. 5 ways men can make themselves more attractive. It's actually a recent post. Yeah, apparently this is why so many people maintain backburner relationships. Anyway, apparently this person is really heavily in the space of relationships, women, men, whatnot. We can predict the number of sexual partners for males by determining at how creative they are. We are liked more by people if we disclose to them. Humorous men may give offspring their genetic benefit of higher intelligence. Well, which actually leads me to, you know, to certain things that I think about throughout the day, every single day, of course. No. If I'd be a woman, you know, and I'm searching for a partner, well, of course, as I've mentioned a couple of times in this episode, I'm gonna probably choose an attractive yet altruistic person, just to cover these 2 things. Of course, if somebody is humorous, apparently can talk well to people, can socialize well with people, and always is a likable person, is a person that other people want to be around with, well, I would certainly also say that this person is more interesting and probably also more attractive to me compared to a very shy person. Obviously, it also depends on who I am, you know, what type of character I have, whether I am actually pretty shy or extroverted, and so on and so forth. Of course, this does matter. This context, once again, it really does matter. But still, I would argue that in general, having a competent and also confident person with you that potentially is also smart enough to help you, has maybe even resources, which I do not really see as something strange, that it is attractive. Like, of course, if I do have a lot of resources, and it is not going to be an issue, especially when it comes to long-term relationships, of course I am going to favor that. Of course I want to have that. Maybe indeed as well, I'm going to choose somebody that has a lot of resources, yet is not as attractive maybe. Just because I know it is something important, just because I know it is something that is going to matter in the future. Compared to having a really highly attractive person, it is, yet this person is shy and I don't know, maybe even an asshole and broke. Like, to some degree, I think things really do make sense. But I do also want to a bit talk about confidence. Since, at least to me, it does make sense why it is attractive. And why it is something that use humor, tell people about yourself. I would rather say, listen, voice examines the vocal characteristics typical of males who were successful at arranging a future meeting with a female participant. In terms of speech style, the researchers found firstly that the male participants' seductive speech style differed from their normal speech style. For example, they used a higher pitch at a high intensity and at an accelerated rate when asking their female partner to meet them again. Analysis of voice patterns over time showed that seduction required flexible use of their voice, modulating their vocal profiles according to the interaction. The researchers suggest that males use an orotoned voice in the initial phase of seduction to impress a female. It sounds so fucking dumb, but let's actually check out what this means. Orotoned. Full, round, and imposing. Synonyms might be deep, sonorous, strong, powerful, full-toned, rich, fruity, clear, round, resonant, ringing, reverberating, loud, booming, imposing, canorous. Sounds great. Which, I think somebody that is confident, somebody that knows who he or she is probably going to use a certain type of voice. Isn't he, or actually isn't she? I would assume, I would guess. Such a vocal style conveys sociability, vitality, enthusiasm, and strength, and is employed to attract the interest of a potential partner. The researchers termed this phase of the interaction vocal exhibition, in which males were trying to portray themselves in an attractive light. Now, of course, and I'm gonna just present myself in an as unattractive way as possible, of course. Anyways, I do think things often really make sense. And with that being said, I'm gonna end the episode. I do really hope that I've been able to talk about some things, share some things that were of importance to you. Gonna see you the next time. Bye bye.